The movie begins in Washington, D.C. We see a lady, Miss Dadden, heading down the subway. As she waits for the train to stop, we see a security camera observing her. After receiving a mysteriously peculiar text that tells her that the answers lie under crossing 1114, she skips her train and goes to look for the answer mentioned in the text message. But, as she arrives at the 1114th crossing, a train starts approaching her, which she narrowly avoids by jumping to the second set of rails. Her happiness is quickly shattered as we see another train heading towards her, which then cuts to the movie formally starting. The movie cuts to the National Archives data center in Bangkok, Thailand. A man is seen approaching Max Peterson, the main character of the movie, asking him if he needs help fixing the security lock. He tells him that it's perfectly fine, and even shows him a rather interesting example of the new security system he installed by causing a power surge in the whole building and restarting the servers. After showing his client that even after a power surge his servers are safe, Max heads off back to his hotel and asks for information about his flight. It's at this point that he receives a mysterious package, and we also see him being observed by a security camera, similar to Miss Dadden. Back in his room, Max opens up the package to find a mysterious mobile phone-like device. Not thinking much of it, Max assumes it's just some advertising from the hotel and puts it down and goes to listen to the news. Apparently there's some controversial bill on the verge of being passed in the Congress. But, before we could find out any more, the ringing device brings Max's attention back to it. Max picks it up to find that he has received an anonymous message asking him why he's in such a rush to go back home, and that he could stay for longer in Thailand considering the hotel rates are at half price this week. He decides to stay another night and calls the hotel staff and reschedules his flight. Meanwhile, somewhere in Moscow, Russia, we see a man walking a dog get a notification on his phone that a new phone has been registered. Back in Thailand, Max is enjoying his time at the hotel by having a nice drink to cool himself, as well as some nice things to cool his eyes. It's at this point we find out that the controversial Senate bill that was mentioned failed to pass. More importantly, the breaking news shows that a Global Skies airline plane crashed today, the same flight Max had scheduled previously. At this point, another message arrives on the phone telling him to buy shares of a particular company if he wants to make money. Still assuming that the device is an advertisement from the hotel, he goes to thank the hotel staff for it, only to find out that the hotel has no such advertisement policy. As he's on the phone discussing the device, he sees that the company that the device told Max to buy shares in just had a massive positive break, with their stock prices going up over 300%. The next morning, Max is checking out of the hotel when he gets another message, supposedly prompting him to go to Prague, Czech Republic if he wants to get rich. A taxi driver asks Max if he wants a taxi. On the way to his hotel, the taxi driver notices Max's phone and tells him more about it. Apparently it's called a GCG 650, and that it hasn't even been released yet. The taxi driver, Yuri, tells Max that if he ever needs accessories and stuff for it, he can call him, as he's a tech specialist who only drives around in his spare time. After checking into the hotel, which was also a recommendation from the device, Max starts to find out just where this device came from, and who sent it to him. He starts by discussing the package with DHL, the company that delivered it to him. But this ends up turning into a dead end as they tell Max that they can't disclose who sent the device. As Max is arguing with the guy on the phone, he receives another text telling him to go to the casino in the hotel, and try the 13th slot machine. As Max arrives at the casino, we get some stereotypical scenes showing what casinos are like in general. Apparently this is the first time Max has been to one such as this. Moving on though, as Max reaches the 13th slot machine, he finds it already occupied by someone else. Just about to let it go, he gets another message on his fancy device that tells him that the fourth spin is going to be the jackpot spin. This prompts Max to try to persuade the guy to leave. After offering him €100. As he's giving the man the money, we see Max being observed by a security camera again, but this time we see the people behind the camera. Back to Max however, now free to get his jackpot, Max pushes the spin on the machine, and lo and behold, it does exactly what the mysterious message on his device said it would. Max wins €100,000. But, this doesn't go unnoticed, and the people behind the camera notice Max. The guy observing Max tells his boss that Max paid off the previous user on the slot machine, and then he won the jackpot, as if he already knew the machine would pay up. The boss then asks for Max's data, but nothing incriminating comes up in their databases. As Max goes to cash out his jackpot, he gets another tip telling him to go to the 6th blackjack table, which prompts him to take all of his newfound riches in chips. At the table, Max bets all of his money on the blackjack table. As he wins at the blackjack table, the security people notice that something is definitely wrong now, and send in Martin, one of their guards, to check up on Max. The guard tells him that mobiles are forbidden, but Max shows him the device and leaves. Max calls Yuri asking if there's some way he can check his text messages without looking at his device. Yuri says he'll hook him up if he gives him 500 euros. Max agrees. Now back in the hotel, Max goes back to his room, but on the way he notices a couple fighting. Wanting to be a white knight, he tries to stop the man from approaching the woman he was fighting with, but quickly gets knocked out by him. While Max is unconscious, the couple turn out to be working for the casino security, and they plant a bug on the SIM card on his new device. When he comes to, the woman that messed with his device is there. After talking a bit with her and fumbling his attempts at being romantic, Max gets a call from Yuri telling him to come meet him in the parking lot. He asks Camilla if he can see her again, to which she agrees. Now at the parking lot, Yuri begins installing a text-to-speech transmitter to the GCG650. As he's doing so, Max asks Yuri if he can find out where the incoming messages are coming from. But Yuri denies, saying that he can't do something like that here. He needs his equipment to do it. Sadly for Max, Yuri's equipment is back in Moscow, Russia. After getting the text-to-speech transmitter installed, Max starts heading back to the hotel, where he gets another message telling him more tips to get rich. This time, Max wins a jackpot of 3 million euros. But his moment is quickly cut short as the security force starts to pursue him. For some reason, Max decides to run for it. He nearly makes it outside but is stopped by a special agent named Grant from the FBI. Grant argues a bit with the head of security of the casino, John, on who gets to take Max, with Grant winning the argument. They take Max to an abandoned warehouse, and start to interrogate him. Grant starts asking questions about the phone. As Max continues telling Grant that he doesn't know anything about the device and who's sending the messages, Grant tells Max that they saw him talking with Yuri, a known hacker, in their records. After threatening Max a bit, Grant finally ends up believing him. John decides to visit Grant. John asks Grant to at least tell him something about Max, and why the FBI has decided to intervene in a matter like this. Grant tells him that there have been other cases of people like Max. All of these people start to receive messages telling them financial tips, but, after some financial tips, the texts change, asking them to do illegal stuff. John asks Grant why they can't just interrogate the people sending the messages, to which Grant says that they can't trace who's behind them. And that they also can't interrogate the recipients because they all end up dead one way or another. Grant tells John that they found Max quicker this time with the help of the NSA. Back to Max, Grant gives him two offers. Either he can help them find who's sending the messages, or he can go to jail for fraud. Seeing no other choice, Max agrees to help. Grant tells Max to go back to the hotel with John, and that he's going to keep his GCG 650 for tonight. Meanwhile, in Fort Meade, Maryland. At the NSA headquarters, Grant talks with the chief there and tells him of his interaction with Max. They also discuss some sort of tracking protocol going live in 3 hours. Back in Prague, John goes to meet with the owner of the casino, who asks John if he has made any progress regarding Max. He tells John to find out how a man with a phone managed to get 3 million euros. He tells him that if his casino is vulnerable, then his other enterprises are vulnerable too. After discussing business, the owner of the casino asks John if he likes archery, and beings to tell him about his love for archery. He says that he used to make his own arrows, and that the trick to making good arrows is to have good feathers. But this isn't a casual talk as much as it is a threat, as he says that he shot the pet falcon he used for his arrows, telling him that no trace should be left. Meanwhile, Max gets a call from Camilla, and they decide to go for a drink. The two of them start talking about careers, and Camilla asks Max why he decided to go into cybersecurity. As the two start to hit it off, Max ends up having to leave. Grant tells him to go back to the casino and wait till he gets 3 messages, so that the NSA can trace the sender. As soon as Max walks back in, he starts to receive more tips in the casino. And thus they start the tracking process. As the second text arrives, they find out that the messages are coming from somewhere in the United States. As Max bets it all once again hoping to win more, no message telling him what to do arrives. After losing all of the money, Max gets up and starts to leave, but the third message arrives after all. Though this message turns out to be different than others, as this one tells Max that this was a warning, and that he should avoid bringing in others to interfere. If he turns the phone off again, he will be killed. Just as the NSA is about to find out who's sending the messages, the NSA decides to abort the mission. Apparently, the one sending the messages is Echelon, the central computer of the NSA that monitors every global message. And it's been hacked. John tells all of this to his boss. The boss tells John to track Peterson, and that he's the one that will lead him to the one sending the message. Back to Max, who's having a nice dinner with Camilla. After some small talk, the two of them share an intimate moment together. The next morning, Camilla gets a call from John, asking if Max is still there. He tells her to keep Max occupied, and be ready for anything. Meanwhile, Grant receives another phone on Max's phone and sends in a body double in Max's stead. Unfortunately for them, the body double gets killed by the device which told him to cross the road at the wrong time. Meanwhile, we see a sniper get into position, but it gets cut off. Back to Max, he discusses Echelon with Camilla. As the two continue to talk, Camilla lets it slip that Max is from Omaha, to which Max says that he never said he's from Omaha. At this moment, the sniper shown earlier starts shooting at Max. If the sniper wasn't enough, two hitmen also approach Camilla's house. Poor Camilla gets shot pretty bad by the sniper, but survives. After a long drawn-out scene with the hitman, and with a little help from Max, the two of them survive. John comes in soon after, and gets Max out of Camilla's house. Meanwhile, the chief of NSA gets a call from the hitman he sent to kill Max, who tells him that Max got away. At the same time, Grant gets a message on the device which tells him get Max or else Grant dies. Meanwhile back to Max, he talks with John about what to do next. Max suggests they get the help of Yuri, but John tells Max that he ran back to Moscow. Max tells John that he's going to Moscow with or without John. Max convinces John to take the Yuri path, and John agrees to take him to Moscow. Now in Moscow, Russia. Max and John go and try to find Yuri. Their trip however doesn't go unnoticed, and NSA picks up on their trail. NSA sends in Grant. Back to Max and John, the two of them give Yuri the SIM card info and tell him to find out who's sending the messages. Yuri agrees, and tells John and Max to give him 3 hours. As Yuri starts to work, John and Max have a little heart-to-heart. John tells Max about his past in the FBI, and how he got kicked out for disagreeing with their methods. But Max pushes a little too far, and the John insists they head back to Yuri. Back at Yuri's place, he tells them that no person is sending the messages, and it's the AI in Echelon itself that's sending the messages. Nobody used Echelon to send the messages, it's Echelon itself. As Yuri is explaining how Echelon works, John notices hitmen raiding Yuri's building, and the two of them decide to run for it. They steal a delivery driver's van and run for it, with the hitmen giving chase. After a long and drawn-out chase scene, the two of them manage to lose all of the FBI men except Grant, who they incapacitate. Grant tells them he wasn't looking to kill them by giving Max his GCG 650 back. Grant tells them that the NSA believes that Echelon is sending the messages itself. Grant asks for Max's help against Echelon. Max agrees. At the same time, Max gets a message on the device telling him to come to the first cybersecurity contract he did, back in Omaha. Apparently it was some sort of bunker that would be used to house confidential data, but it was sold soon after and hasn't been used since. They head there along with a lot of security forces, SWAT and whatnot, and blow open its doors. Inside the bunker, John, Grant, and Max start to investigate. At this time, Max gets another message telling him to authorize the BIOS inside the bunker's server. Max turns on the servers and opens up the server BIOS. They find out that there hasn't been any access to the servers. Seeing it as a dead end, the three of them start to leave. But, as they leave, we see data start to appear on the console of the server, which is apparently some data outbreak going off. Apparently, Echelon has left the NSA servers and is apparently upgrading itself somehow. If it manages to finish, Echelon will be unstoppable. Grant tells Max to stop it, but Max receives a message telling him not to try it. A lot of movie hacking scenes happen that don't make any sense, but, in simple words, Echelon takes all the money of everyone in the state hostage, and that if they shut it down, everyone loses their money. Grant calls and asks the chief of NSA on how to shut it down. This is where the plot twist happens. Apparently, this is what the chief wanted all along. As John tries to convince him to stop it, Max attempts to shut Echelon down. This prompts the chief of NSA to send in agents to take out the three. John and Grant get ready to deal with the oncoming FBI agents that are coming to kill them. Meanwhile, Max tries talking to the AI, and ends up convincing the AI that since it wants to protect the freedom of US citizens, it should take a look at what it is itself. The AI somehow finds out that it's violating the freedom to have privacy of the US citizens, and the AI just realizes it's a threat to freedom itself and deletes itself. But the trouble isn't over, as they still have people from the NSA coming to take them in. They arrest the three and take them to the NSA headquarters. Though the three manage to get out just fine because they can't really be pressed for charges. Max even gets a visit from Camilla in the end. And it ends happily ever after. Except for a little twist with Yuri, who turns out to be a Russian agent.